Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. We have a full agenda once again today. We're going to be having a subcommittee report on the results of their last meeting. And we're also going to be doing an exercise in a World Cafe format, which Jessica Correa and Jessica Olson will present to you in a few minutes. But first, I'd like to invite Janet Gardner up to make a presentation on the results of the subcommittee meeting.
So my name is not Janet, it's John Klassen. I'm the Director of Strategies and Incentives at the district, and Janet is going to come up and help present this with me. Come on up. Just wanted to give you a summary of what we discussed at the Air Monitoring Subcommittee meeting just last week. Those of you who haven't been too involved in the air monitoring topic for this, just wanted to give you a brief summary and a timeline of what we've done so far. So back in April, we talked about air monitoring pretty extensively at our full committee meeting, had a lot of great feedback, good discussion from that. That was very helpful. The committee asked that a subcommittee be formed to take more time to talk about air monitoring so we can allow for more time to talk about other topics. So we did that. We had a subcommittee meeting on May 1st, went through a nice exercise, got some great feedback, went back to the full committee after that, got some more feedback. The thought was to do another subcommittee with more toxics data available, have some more information. We were able to do that last week, went through the same exercise, got another good set of feedback from the subcommittee members, and we eventually came up with the recommended design of the network back to the Air District, which I'll let Janet discuss a little bit more.
So the subcommittee on this last one where we met, we went through on what units are available, what they can monitor for, and then looked at the map. Do you have it? You have it. So, and we got in more of a discussion broader through with more people involved in trying to locate the areas where it was showing high VOCs and other items that were specific interest to the group. So what we came up with, you can see here, compact unit and the trailer down on the south end, compact unit in another high area, and the PM monitors in the yellow is the van roaming and looking for a few areas that we saw. And if you look at one of your maps that shows VOCs, it had 3 triangles that were red. So the van, we were trying to hit those and get some other stuff so that we made sure we were covering those areas and making sure it looked equitable on coverage. And we did have a good discussion on this last one where we had more people talking and we actually interacted a lot more trying to get areas and get this started so that we can start the monitoring and see what's going on in our community. Does anyone have any questions on how we went through it and got there? Yes, sir. The yellow dot is the van that can roam. So it's like a route where the van can drive around in certain areas and see what's going on in those areas. Okay? And it was a lot based on the slide right before it where it says what each one can monitor for. Realize the trailer can do everything. The compacts can do the BTEX, which has some of the VOCs. So we just tried to cover those areas really well. Yes, sir.
The compact air monitoring system on the south,
Yep.
What street and intersection is that? Is it somewhere that?
It's close to Central and Cedar, Orange. It's hard to read the vertical ones. It's, you know where Daleville is?
Yeah, I know where
Orange
Central.
Center School?
Yeah, I know where that's at.
That's right around that corner in that box, which was K. So it's very close to there.
Okay. I was just wondering why we didn't end up with something on Jensen Avenue that was so heavily traveled.
Just to comment on that too, so the locations that you see here, how South Central Fresno was broken up into various zones, when the subcommittee made their recommendations on where monitoring should be placed, they basically put stickers just somewhere in that zone. So what we're showing here isn't what could be the exact location of monitoring, We'll do our best to make it work in these areas, get as close as we can, but the exact position of where it's going to be could be a little bit different than what we're displaying here.
If you get the permission from the homeowner and other stuff, and why there's not one right on Jensen, I don't remember. If you remember some of the slides back, there's already some monitors in that area, so we didn't want to use our limited resources on areas that already had some stuff there.
Thanks, Janet, and really appreciate the subcommittee's feedback on this process. All the information that we received has been very helpful, and for all the comments from the committee. And yes, one other comment.
Yeah, is there going to be PM25 monitoring at Drummond and Fresno Foundry?
Fresno Foundry, we will. We've committed to that. We'll have a monitor there for Fresno Drummond. We're considering that. And I also wanted to mention in our process here, we're going to be putting together a air monitoring network plan, a document for this community, and that's going to describe exactly what monitors are going to be placed where, what pollutants we'll be measuring. So that's going to kind of show you all the details of what we're doing. So you can review that, comment on that. We'll have that available soon, and we'll send it out to the committee once it's available. No, I mean, I feel like we had a good recommendation from the subcommittee. This is a great process. I don't feel that that's really necessary. We've gotten a lot of comments from the whole group here, and I think we're ready to move forward with getting this network implemented.
I have a comment. I know you answered this question for the subgroup, but I think it is very important that the entire group knows how these data will be made public in terms of the website that is going to be available in Spanish. So you can explain more about that?
Yeah, so just for briefly, and this will be explained in the air monitoring plan document too that we're developing. They'll explain that more, but we're planning to make this data available on our district website. It'll be on CARB's statewide data portal. You can view it there as well. Not just this community, but all the communities throughout the state of California. You can view it there. You can download the data from there, so it's going to be very accessible for everybody.
One other question is the PM25 monitoring at Pacific College. Will you be doing hourly, that's available on the hour?
Yeah, so right
there?
now that's just filter-based monitoring. We
Yeah.
get one reading that represents a
3
24-hour. We don't have any plans right now to install a real-time monitor there.
I know that we had our subcommittee for air monitoring, but I think we do need to open this up to a vote because it was only our job to represent, go into detail, and bring it back. And I know we've sort of had one opportunity for people to give comments, but to keep it legitimate, I don't feel comfortable being a part of that subcommittee and making sure that I've heard everything from the whole group. Also, can we check the AC, see if they can turn it down?
We do apologize for the heat. We know it's hot. The AC is as low as it can go, unfortunately. So that's something we'll work on for next time.
Hi, how are you doing today? One of my questions is we got this voluminous amount of data at the breakout meeting, and I'm wondering how come we don't have that data presented the way we requested it at this meeting so everybody can see the elements that we're dealing with. Because I know I had requested,
Okay.
that they be sorted and color-coded, red for the high and green for livable.
Yeah, I'm looking at Jessica here, so maybe she can share more details. But yeah, we did rework that data set. It has been resorted, and I think it's posted on our website.
Yeah, so we posted all, and I believe, and if an email didn't go out about posting the subcommittee resources, I apologize, but we did post all of the subcommittee resources, and we did resort all of the toxics data, and we just posted that, or are in the middle of posting that right now. But I believe it has been posted. I'm trying to look for Brian. I believe the toxics stuff has been posted and it's on the committee website. And it is resorted, packaged by these community zones and packaged by pollutant sorted high to low. So as opposed to just sort of like in the alphabetical order within the zones, it's much more manageable in that regard. In terms of your other question, we still have it represented in the way that we presented it at the committee with the pounds per day emissions rate for those toxics data. And again, it's sort of, as Brian mentioned at the subcommittee meeting, and it's explained on the toxics data sheet that is posted online, sort of why that's the way that we presented it and sort of what that really means for toxics.
It's great that it's posted online, but I'm a very tactile girl, and for me to print it, means I would have to go out in 105-degree weather to someplace to print it when it should be provided to us.
Good point. We can certainly next time and maybe even send it to you in the meantime so you can have that before even the next meeting. No, yeah, and that's what I'm saying. We'll definitely bring it for next time. Definitely. Thank you. We appreciate that.
Did you have a question? All right, so it looks like we don't have any more questions. Would anybody like to make a comment about the subcommittee's recommendations or provide feedback?
Can we make a motion to vote?
Absolutely.
I make a motion we vote and approve the design as much as possible is there, pending actual specific locations within each area due to ownership and availability and how that works.
Sorry, I'm going to ask you to repeat that in the microphone.
So I'm going to make a motion that we approve the proposed monitoring locations and the van route as it appears on the screen, with obviously being able to find specific locations within each zone that will allow us or to put those monitors there and for the continued monitoring.
I second the motion.
We had 2 seconds. Lisa also seconded. All right, all in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. I have 17 in favor and all opposed. I don't see any. Motion carries, and we will go ahead and move on to our next item. Jessica Correa is going to make a brief presentation on the SERP development process.
All right, everybody. My name's Jessica Correa. Thank you all for being here and braving the heat to come out and be on our committee tonight. We really appreciate it. I'm going to be talking with you tonight about a brief overview of the SERP development process, which might be a review for the majority of you, but I wanted to go over it again just in case you weren't able to attend the last meeting on May 30th. And then I'm also excited to be presenting our preliminary emission reduction strategy concept list tonight for further discussion in our next agenda item. So just to kind of recap what a community emission reduction program is, this is going to be the culmination of our work in the AB 617 process. Guidance on what needs to go into the SERP is included in CARB's Community Air Protection Blueprint in Appendix C. So that's listed online, and feel free to review that for more details about what we're working on here. I also went over with the committee the main points of the SERP and our draft outline for the SERP back in April. So kind of to date, we've been working on understanding what the community air quality challenges and concerns are. And going forward, from this meeting moving forward, we'll be addressing what the solutions are for those challenges and concerns. So just to kind of highlight, we do have some really big upcoming deadlines that we can't miss. In September 19th, we're going to be presenting our finalized SERP for our San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District Governing Board approval. By October 1st, the Air District has to forward the SERP to CARB for their review and approval. And so we do have a long way to go between now and September. How are we going to get there? This slide kind of goes over the plan for now until we present a draft SERP to the committee in August. So at the May 30th meeting, we did a prioritization exercise with the committee to get some more input about what the committee's sources of concern are. If you weren't able to attend that meeting, we did send out a makeup worksheet of prioritization for the concerns that came out of that meeting, and we do have extra copies of that worksheet available here tonight. So if you need an extra copy of that, please let me know. We really value your input, and definitely if you haven't had a chance to fill out that worksheet, contact me or Heather, and we can help you out with that. So this meeting, June 12th, we are going to be going over that list of strategy concepts, and we'll be discussing them in a World Cafe format, which Jessica Olson will be talking with you about in a little bit. Moving forward in June, late June 26th, we will be further refining the strategies that we outlined tonight. And then moving into July, we're going to be talking about the targets and metrics for the SERP. So targets are going to be our goals for what we want to implement for each of the individual measures, and then metrics are going to be how we track our progress over time in our annual reports and then at our 5-year milestone report. So diving into tonight's meeting, we are going to be talking about ways to reduce air pollution in South Central Fresno. There are several kind of buckets you can think of for emission reduction strategies. So think about the following as kind of tools in your toolkit for proposing new strategies for the SERP. We have incentive-based pollution reduction strategies. Those could be either new measures or enhanced measures for the existing programs we already have. Regulatory strategies must be taken through a public process for a rulemaking process, and we can tell you more about what's involved in that process here tonight. But just keep in mind, because of the Valley's non-attainment status for various federal air quality standards, we do have extensive regulations on our stationary sources in the Valley already. We will be looking for additional opportunities for what we can do to help protect South Central Fresno and our other AB 617 communities through this process. Outreach and engagement strategies are going to be critical because as we're developing these processes, if no one knows about them, they're not going to work. So as you're experts in your community, if you can think about ways that we can better inform the public about what's existing and what we're going to be implementing through the CERT process, that's going to be super valuable and really helpful. Finally, for things the Air District doesn't have jurisdiction over, partnerships with other agencies like CARB, cities, counties for land use, those partnerships are going to be really critical. Mitigation strategies are our final bucket. Those don't actually reduce pollution, but they do help to protect sensitive receptors like children or the elderly from the impacts of pollution. So these might be things like a school filtration system or maybe a vegetative biofilter. Ideas like that we're going to be discussing in more detail tonight. So finally, I know everyone's really excited to hopefully get some more information about what we're proposing for our preliminary strategy concepts tonight. So if you turn to in your packet, this list is going to be our preliminary strategy concepts. This draft list of emission reduction strategy concepts has been developed based on the community's feedback on sources of concern to date, and will be further defining and developing these strategies based on your input in the coming months. So tonight, to give you more information about what's proposed in these strategies, we're going to be going into World Cafe style conversations. This is going to be the committee's chance to ask experts for additional information about what's proposed in these, to bounce ideas off experts for the various topics, and to hopefully brainstorm some additional ideas. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to Jessica Olson, and she's going to guide us through our World Cafe exercise.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Jess. Oh, yes.
Real quick on this list that you gave us, is this what we're going to be held to for the next 5 years?
I will go over all of that right now, but
And can we make,
strategies like this will be part of the SERP depending on your input today.
okay, so we
this-
can change it.
Certainly, and that's actually what
Oh,
I'm about to
good.
get into.
Thank you.
So thank you for that introduction. We are going to go through, as Jess mentioned, a World Cafe style. Can I finish explaining, or do you need? Okay, thanks, Amy. I appreciate it. We're going to go through a World Cafe style process where these are just draft, and you'll notice they're kind of general strategies. A lot of them are built off of the feedback that we've gotten throughout all of the meetings. Feedback especially that we got through the prioritization exercise last regular subcommittee meeting, and feedback that we've gotten in written and verbal comments from the public. And it's pretty comprehensive, but like I mentioned, it's kind of high level in some of the categories. And so what it's really meant to do is sort of introduce you to some concepts, but not all the concepts, just a draft sort of initial list of concepts that could be incorporated as a part of the SERP that Lisa just mentioned would be in that sort of 5-year commitment of the SERP. So yes, once developed, this will be in that document, but that's kind of up to the committee and working with the district to form what those recommendations look like. These are just starting points to start getting the discussion going on exactly what strategies we want to tackle. A lot of you guys already have a lot of strategies, and that's what we really want to talk about today is this is some of the list. This is some of the list a lot of you guys have put input into, but we want a ton of additional stuff, and there's actually a worksheet where we want you to fill out whatever else on that list we want. But there's also a recognition that we're not all experts in a lot of these things on this list. Maybe we're really familiar with passenger vehicles and heavy duty, but we don't know really much about land use, and we definitely want to talk to the experts about residential ways we can reduce urban pollution, or legal trash burning was something we talked about last time. We have experts at every table that are maybe part of the compliance department, our permits department, our incentives team, and the idea is right now you can go through just kind of high level, take a look at this list, and figure out who you want to talk to. We have table numbers and tables all around the room that are labeled, and tables that are associated with which strategy. And you can sit down, and we're going to probably do about 45 minutes to an hour, where we're going to go through multiple rotations. We're thinking about 3 rotations, 15 to 20 minutes, where you can sit down with the experts and ask them as many questions as you want about this. After 20 minutes, we recommend that you get up and move to the next table to ask more questions of someone else. Or if you have one specific table that's what you want to talk about or you want to ask the experts about, you can sit there the whole hour. It's really up to you. The idea is that you started in these groups that we're sitting in now, so we might have some of the couple of 2 and 3 people kind of grouped together. We recognize you can't get to all 7 tables in an hour, so the idea is working together as a committee or a group to maybe divide and conquer the different tables and then come back together and brief each other on some things you learned. Now, again, if you know that everyone at your table is certainly pretty well versed in the way that all of table number 1 works, you do not have to go to table number 1. We're not requiring everyone go to every table. We just want this as your opportunity to talk in depth. A lot of the times we've been answering questions sort of generally, or some of us have been up here and we're kind of, okay, we'll get back to you once we talk to the expert. The expert's here today, so we want you to be able to talk to that person. When you come back to your groups, the idea is that you brief each other on things you learned and talk about new ideas. We want then at the very, very end, and I'll go over this at the end as well, to have you guys get up and talk about ideas that aren't on here, maybe just in general to the committee, because we want in the next couple weeks people to come up with additional ideas or refined versions of these ideas. And the more you say it out loud to the committee and not just in the groups or not just at the tables, the more you might spark new ideas from other people or kind of get that planted in their brain for them to think about the next time we discuss that idea. It's kind of already introduced to them. So if there's something on this list that you think that seems crazy, I don't want that, or this is something I have no idea about, I want to learn more about that, this is your opportunity to discuss it with district folks, CARB folks, folks, like I said, in a lot of different departments and at the district and at ARB. Yes, Naimeen.
I just have a comment. I skimmed through the list, and if I'm not mistaken, almost 30 out of the 45 strategies rely on incentives. So I just want not to be, lost in that idea that everything is going to be resolved through incentives, because
Certainly.
we know that the funding might be limited. So I don't want us to say, oh, incentives sounds great, and just to end in September thinking that's a great plan, and then where is the money going to come from?
Right.
So I think that, definitely having that as something to consider. And if you said the district has already really good rules, maybe what we need better is better enforcement of those
Certainly,
rules.
and that's something you can bring up at the tables, and we agree. We want you to add to this list no matter what the type of strategy it is.
So I guess this is off of what you're saying, Nayamin, and a question form. Before I go to a table, I prefer to be at the table. Who's going to be discussing the mitigation ideas that we as a committee might have, and the ideas about enforcement that we might have? Also, Brian, earlier on in a past meeting, we got the slide showing us hundreds of rules, but that's asking, again, layman's to understand rules that we don't have the time to go into great detail about. But what should be happening is that there is a connection between all of the concerns that we've made. For example, I think it was Lydia made the comment, I can't remember, one of our members here made the comment of, is there flaring happening at night? What's happening for there to be high smells between 2 a.m. and early in the morning? We as laymen don't know
No, that's a great
what
question.
rule that would apply to,
Yes.
but where we need your expertise is to say, okay, that sounds like it goes into this rule. We need to open that rule up and discuss what needs to be amended or added. So I don't know how effective this tabling is going to be if we're not discussing all the other things on here besides incentives.
So if you go to table 6, that's where we start talking about stationary sources, glass plant, biomass, chrome platers. Everyone, I believe, at that table looks like there's a compliance person and 2 permits people and a planning person at that table. And you can certainly hear in layman's terms all about those rules. We are also following up this meeting with to your point, a very specific, much more condensed, easier to digest version of this is something you're concerned about, like flares. This is everything that controls flares. This is what's been done to date, as opposed to just kind of verbalizing it. So we'd certainly recognize that. We're putting that together and getting it translated as we speak. But I certainly recommend if stationary sources are your concern, as has been discussed a lot here, table 6 is the table to go, certainly. Yes, sir.
Last week, we spent like half the meeting people prioritizing their ideas about the most egregious kinds of pollution that needed to be addressed. What's been done or going to be done with that, and should it be part of this?
Yes, so it's been done to start. It's been done to make this. We just posted, again, I believe we just posted the summarization of that. And coming soon in a couple of weeks when we do more of the prioritization of these, that is going to actually be, like the list of that will be directly applied. The reason we haven't directly applied it here and kind of shown you the rankings is, like Jess mentioned earlier, we wanted to give everyone else who wasn't here that night, a lot of people were absent, the opportunity to participate. And so we're still waiting on, to make sure that we felt like we got more feedback before we can finalize what that is. But yes, we are combining that all into more of a prioritization version of this, but we felt like we couldn't really prioritize these related to that until you guys kind of got a handle on what these were. So tonight is sort of the educational component of the strategies, and then with your source concern prioritization, plus an understanding of the strategies, plus your additional strategies, that'll kind of build into 2 weeks from now's meeting. So right now, I encourage everyone to take a look. If you want, as a group, to come up with sort of a game plan of tackling all the different tables, if you want, as a group, to all go to the same table, or you as an individual want to go to whichever tables you want, it's really up to you. We just encourage you at the end. We're going to try to come to multiple tables and get a good dialogue going so we can think of new ideas. So maybe take 5 minutes to kind of think about which tables you'd like to go to, and then we'll break out and start the exercise.
Also, are the community allowed to
Oh,
join
yes.
the tables
Thank
as
you
well?
so much for saying that. This is open to everyone. So for those of you who haven't picked one up in the public, these are on the table, and they have the table number associated. And we have table 1 over here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And everyone is welcome. And at the end, when we come back, the public is welcome to be part of that conversation too. You don't have to go back and sit over there. We can all talk at the tables together. All right. All right, thank you guys. And in a couple of minutes, we'll go ahead and break out. Go ahead and please just look at this comprehensive list. And this sheet is where we want to hear all of the ideas that you have that are amendments or additions to the strategy list that we have here, or ideas that are completely new ones or additions that you've already talked about, some of the ideas that you talked about at the tables. We would like you in your group discussions, for those of you who are back at the tables, to talk about some of those ideas. That way you spark those new ideas in everyone else. And we would, if everyone was at a table, we were planning on having people from those tables then stand up and sort of talk about their ideas with the committee. That way everyone had a chance to hear it before we break for another couple of weeks. So if you guys want to quickly make it back, I know we can do this in the next 15 minutes. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. You can certainly go back and talk to the district and CARB representatives after the meeting. I'm just going to wrap up with a couple of really great ideas some people had about the actual materials. One suggestion, so that we can facilitate better discussion maybe in a couple of weeks at the next meeting, was to have some indication on a lot of these incentives-based strategies. Don't really have any sort of like cost per ton or how much they would cost, how effective they might be. So we're going to look into having a little bit more detail on a lot of these strategies at this next meeting, in addition to some of the other strategies that we are soliciting from you at the end of this meeting and going into the next meeting in a couple of weeks. So what we'd like now, and I appreciate everyone finally coming back, I know that there was a lot of good discussion, is time for you guys to discuss. I know not everyone made it to every single table, and we would really like each table to have 1 or 2 ideas that maybe aren't on here, and just, it's not time necessarily for discussion or feedback, but just in a couple of minutes we'll have one representative say a couple of things out loud to the committee that are additional ideas to kind of spark new ideas as we solicit feedback from you. And what feedback is going to look like is this sheet that's attached. We will also be sending it out. And we want, on one side is questions about current strategies that are on this list. The other side is additional strategies. Whatever you come up with in your committee, whatever you personally feel, based on your discussions, would be a good strategy for the SERP. So right now, in discussions with your group, or even individually, kind of think of a couple of additional ideas that aren't on this list. I'm sure you have plenty already. And then we'll give like a couple of minutes per table to talk out loud. That way we have a little bit of more of a community idea of what other people are thinking, and they can start thinking while they put this together over the next couple of weeks. Does that make sense? All right, thank you everyone. And in about 5 minutes, we'll go ahead and have each table present some of their additional ideas.
So Cody is going to come around with the microphone, and we would ask that each group select one person to report back to the larger group what strategies and recommendations you've discussed. So why don't we start over here? And as you're reporting, we would also ask that you write down what you've discussed in your ideas so that we can have a copy of that. And of course, Rachel will also be taking notes.
They didn't have anything to discuss. We're busy writing.
Thank you very much. Yes, under Measure 8, if you will, it was the closest I could get, but in terms of heavy truck, heavy-duty truck, on the south side, something needs to be incorporated to capture actual changing of truck routes, you know? having trucks drive right down through a heavily populated community is just stupid. And we go from every packing and manufacturing center west of the 41 comes down from Kerman all the way to the 41 down Jensen Avenue. And so we need to come up with some sort of process that will capture the data and the information where we can go to all the agencies and all the mobile and stationary businesses that are responsible for that truck traffic to be able to enlighten them and engage them. Thank you.
Thank you.
I do want to remind everyone, this isn't the only opportunity to submit your comments. So even if you are writing them down, if you feel like you need to take more time, type them out. We are sending the list, that worksheet out so that you guys can type it out, think a little bit more on it. So maybe try to summarize some high-level stuff right now in the time that we have so that everyone kind of gets a chance when we go table to table.
Well, my bailiwick really is to change CEQA, to have a statutory change that would affect the southwest area of Fresno and look at impacts, how to reduce the impacts, positive mitigation, and also to look at land use, transit, new development of businesses in the area, and hold it to a higher level where the community is no longer damaged. That's my bailiwick, guys.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you guys? Okay. Some of the other ones, the heavy-duty trucks measures, I'm not too sure if it's number 6 through number 8. The need to use renewable biodiesel in local fleets for farm engines, trucks, and/or vehicles that are coming in and out of a community. Another one was regarding biomass and chrome platers, measures 37 and 36. Make complaints and inspections available to the public, and so that the communities know that they're actually being heard, and to know that actions have been taken. To make enforcement more stringent on the highest polluting emitters. Another one was enforcement measures to reduce truck idling, reroute trucks from going through a community, mitigation measures of all facilities being built in the industrial triangle. We know that they get a lot of tax incentive reductions. Is there a way to make mitigation factors to include them being responsible for improving the community through tree growing, barriers that separate them from the school or the community? We need more details on land use. Yeah.
Thank you. My name's Ed Ward. A couple of things. I really think on the passenger vehicle side, we need to increase the incentive for the community to be able to replace vehicles that are high emitters. And my argument would be that we need to actually get the community into vehicles that pass smog tests, so that we're not looking at that portion of the problem. That would be a significant increase in what's available through tune-ups and things like that currently. I would ask, I was somewhat surprised, and it's, again, my opinion, the indication that in the heavy-duty trucks, there's lots of choices for Class 8 vehicles electrically. There just is not. It's not available yet, but it's coming. I don't disregard it, but today it's not a reality, and I'm not sure it should be part of the solution ultimately, other than the forward vision. And then I would say that also regarding emissions failures. I think that one of the things that CARB made the choice of long ago for diesel particulate filtration
was that they would take their failure analysis quarterly from the manufacturers. Well, it's very similar to the fox counting the hens every day in the chicken house. Public has had, the industrial community's had a horrible time with some of the certified CARB components that are out there, and CARB doesn't act on those frustrations. And I would ask that that be a part of it. And then finally, a piece that's not on any of the current solutions is there are some other diesel types that hold potential to immediately reduce emissions, tailpipe emissions to a certain extent. That would be renewable diesel and biodiesel blends to B20 with either ultra-low sulfur diesel or renewable diesel blended with biodiesel. Ultimately, the components have very few carbons in them, and depending upon the base of how the renewable's made, we can see up to 2/3 reduction in air emissions immediately. And it's not a long-term solution, but it's an immediate solution that holds some value.
I would just say that reading through this entire list here, that an impression comes across pretty clearly that there's a focus on using as a tool incentives, and I think relying on that alone is going to be ineffective. It's not going to get us to where we want to be. It's not going to get us to where we should have been yesterday, and there needs to be more utilization here of penalties and or outright prohibitions on things. At some point, have the incentives for a period of time, but at some point, hey, you've got to get rid of your commercial gas lawnmower. Hey, you've got to stop burning in your fireplace. Hey, you've got to stop this. We give you a period of time to make an adjustment, and then change needs to come. This is just too much of coddling people on and on and on, which they have been. And 10 years down the road, we'll look back and say, oh, gee, we really could have gotten a lot farther if we would have been more aggressive with people. And here we're choosing not to be. So,
I'd like to agree with that. In the blueprint that the California Resources Board laid out for this program, there are 6 main strategies or buckets of strategies that we need to comply with. And incentives is one of those 6. There's others, such as changing the permitting requirements, facility audits, new regulations. And so my suggestion would be to put the strategies that we have now into those 6 buckets, and then start to explore more the buckets that are not being used, like regulations and permitting changes and facility audits. That's one point. Nayamin had brought this up, and I also agree with this, is that each emission reduction strategy should have a cost associated with it. We should also know how much money we have to begin with, so we know where we want to focus our limited resources. And we should also have the expected emission reduction from each strategy, so that we know how to be most effective. Lastly, I spoke with some others. I know there's a lot of meetings coming up, and I know it's hard for everyone to attend. And so we did have one suggestion, that the June 26th and the July 24th meeting became a subcommittee for the SERP development, and we left the other meetings open for everyone else. So we're reducing the amount of time people have to spend away from their family and in the heat. And there can be a smaller group working on the development of the SERP. Anything, Naomi, you want to add?
I echo everything that my fellow members here in this table had said. The only other thing I would add is that in the number 34, where it says provide assistance during CEQA process, I think that that's such a weak language. We need the Air District not to be rubber stamping the things that the city is doing just because it seems a good idea to have warehouse that is going to, bring so much in taxes, but your role is to actually analyze what are the air quality impacts of having those many diesel trucks moving in and out of that warehouse, and making sure that the council members, when presented with this idea of approving these projects, know these impacts. Because right now we're getting away with, oh, it's a negative environmental impact, and that's not the case. So I think that we need you to be the backstop for us in terms of if the city wants to approve these projects, you are the public health entity that needs to protect us from that from happening.
A couple of things we looked at that would just be more as the Air Board encouraging. Some of the traffic and the idling stuff, like our major freeways, 4199 during rush hour traffic is basically stopped. So they're all just sitting there emitting. So if we can encourage industry and businesses to shift their schedules, it's pretty much not a big asking for a lot of money. It's just changing the schedules so that people go at different times so our rush hour traffic isn't sitting there on that nice purple line of the highway. The other one that some other cities and counties are doing, garbage trucks, when they go pick up, are doing a night or very early morning route. What that does is they no longer have to stop and get stuck or idle. They're in and out. They're not in rush hour traffic. They're able to get in and out. It does add noise. It does add noise in the neighborhood because they're picking it up. But it is some that some of the others have investigated doing as a way of reducing the traffic impact. Again, it's not a high-cost money dollar. It does change your outlook. But right now I know the city and the county say you cannot pick up before a certain time due to noise. I do agree on the enforcement. It just has to be clear, consistent. And you guys have a really good enforcement staff. They go out and get the inspections done and looking at that. It's just clear, consistent, and appreciate that.
I'm just going to make a couple comments. We've been talking about the diesel trucks a lot. Well, it's true, the older ones particularly pollute a lot, but I've heard different returns on the pollution, and I've heard like 2010 and later diesel trucks have been improved, like in some areas as much as 90% less emissions than 80 to 90%. That's a pretty big reduction. So therefore, the concentration maybe could be redirected to other factors like improving the transportation industry in a whole. For example, if we're going to go to electric trucks, or we're going to go to hydrogen trucks, or we're going to go to whichever mode, it's going to take quite a bit of money to get that development done. And it's like the old story of what comes first, the chicken or the egg. Well, for these technologies to work, you have to have a place. For example, if you were going to go electric, I'm not promoting any one thing, but whichever direction you're going to go, you need infrastructure, or it's not going to happen. If all of us bought hydrogen cars, or one of us bought a hydrogen car, and we had to drive to Harris Ranch every day to fuel it, well, then it's not going to take over. If you have a truck and you have to have many batteries, for example, to go here to LA because there's no place to fuel in the route, then you're not going to be able to haul any payload because the batteries are going to be so heavy that you're not going to have any payload left. So just bring up to the attention that whichever technology you want to switch to from the diesel, we need to work on getting fast recharging sites, or if it's hydrogen stations, or whatever technology you want to go to. But the diesels have improved so dramatically since 2010 that I think you'd be shocked and surprised.
I was thinking about more regulation over the gardening equipment and less dependent on incentive programs. I think Jeff Eisinger mentioned that, and Genevieve. And having lower levels of emissions and PM 2.5 and dust in general. I live in an 88-unit condo complex, and I've been there like 35 years. And we've changed gardeners several times, and even the latest one doesn't use any electric equipment. It's all gas engines. And I mean, they're a big company in town. I can't think of the name right now. But they should at least have something, you know, maybe like we were discussing with Ms. Vu at Table 3, where they have some kind of push type sweepers where they can pick stuff up. Instead, they blow it, their gas engines, blowers, they don't have any vacuum equipment, let's put it that way, or any sweeping equipment. It all blows in the air about 3-4 stories. Comes back in through our air conditioners, windows, and elsewhere, gaps around things. And then on fireplace usage, if you could promote with the TV stations, radio stations, not to promote burning once you have a little bit of rain comes, clearing the air, and then they all of a sudden say, you know, light your fire up if you're registered, which just promotes burning, which we should discourage burning.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for your feedback. Yes, I'm going to get to that. So first, just again, want to remind you, as Jessica mentioned, that if you do have additional comments, you can feel free to submit those in writing anytime. And we're going to take this feedback and use it for the next committee meeting. I did want to address Genevieve's suggestion that the next meeting, which is planned for, I believe, June 26th, be a subcommittee meeting rather than a meeting of the full committee. Is that something that you're generally interested in doing, having a subcommittee meeting rather than a committee meeting? Yes. Can I just see a quick show of hands? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so 10 in favor. Any opposed? Okay. So it sounds like that will be a subcommittee meeting then on June 26th. In terms of wrap up and next steps, after the June 26th subcommittee meeting, we'll have 2 July meetings on July 10th and July 24th. And I think with that, we are ready to start public comment. If any members of the public wish to speak, Cody has the microphone there. All right, seeing none, we will go ahead and adjourn this meeting. Oh, yes. The question for the translator is, when do we need to submit our comments on the draft of the, oh. Ah.
So the question is, if I know that sometimes when you need to take things to your board, you need to have drafts ready like 30 days in advance. So if your September 19 board meeting, that's when you present the SERP for a vote. That means that the draft needs to be finalized by August 19th or earlier. Is that correct?
So we don't have to do a full 30-day public notice for this, for the SERP. So we need to post it at least a week before our governing board meeting in September, but that does give us some flexibility as to when the SERP's finalized in August.
Okay.
That could even get pushed back to early September if needed, if there's still some things we're finalizing.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you so much, everyone. We appreciate your time, and we will see some of you on the 26th and the full committee on July 10th.